Please welcome Holger, who will be talking about Debian for contributing hackers.
Hi, hello. So I've prepared everything in a pad where you can add stuff, or you could also troll me. So I made a backup. If you remember one thing from this talk, then please do remember to file bugs. File bugs always and often and about anything with patches if possible. Debian is also the basis for many other distros, so the work will also benefit others. Well, let's drop it. I'm using Debian since 23 years now, contributed since 17. I started with one package I was really interested in, Phi, and then I got more involved, and nowadays do mostly work on reproducible builds, but also on other QA stuff like Jenkins and PO parts. And I was asked to give talk about this last week, so it's a bit chaotic, I think, but anyway. So Debian is named after Toy Story names, which was a movie from from Pixar, and Bruce Perens, who was a Debian project leader at the time, found that funny or whatever. So unstable is always SID. Experimental is always RC buggy, which is either release critical or this RC remote controlled buggy in the movie. Testing is at the moment Buster, and the next release after that will be Bullseye and Bookworm, which is very nice to have 3 releases starting with a B in a row. Stretch is stable since a year, and since more than 14 years, Debian stable is actually released every 23 months with a variation of 1.5 months or something. So it's pretty stable, predictable, the release date. There's now LTS, which is an external effort to provide support for old stable after the old stable support runs out. The old stable support always runs out a year after the release of stable. So now there's LTS, which does 2 more years, so I give it a release totally 5 years. And ELTS, Extended LTS, is newly started a month ago for VZ, and that will 1 year more for VZ. Maybe more if there are more paying sponsors. And since 1 or 2 releases, there's also more importance on the version number to increase them with every release. It's just a new major version. So we're now at 9 and soon we'll be at Debian 10. Buster, I think, will be frozen in March or so. I've not really looked it up. And there's this point releases where just a stable release at some time gets a point release, which is mostly an organizational thing, how the updates are piled up, and you can always just upgrade to a point release. And some places still speak of 9.5.0, but that has no practical impact, as the next release will be 9.6. And Debian Unstable is mostly pretty usable, except 2 months after the release. Then Unstable is really unstable. Stable doesn't change. Yeah, and systemd, I thought I just mentioned it in the beginning. You can still have Debian without systemd. Some functionality in desktop doesn't work, and actually systemd needs help. So if you want to keep it, contribute. And Debian is fundamentally package-based. Everything is in a package. So you can do apt install foo, and you can also do apt source foo to get the sources, then cd into that directory and build it, and fix some bugs or whatever you want to do. I wanted to turn off IRC. Guess Steve is running. And the other options for this debuild are in the dpackage build package man page. If you want to build packages, but there's way more things about Debian than building packages, so I will not explain more package building stuff in this thingy. Maintaining packages, anybody can do this. There's no affiliation with Debian required. You don't have to be whatever. There is now different things in Debian. So there's Debian maintainers, Debian developers, and non-uploading developers, which are just how Debian organizes itself, which I'll come to in a second also. But you can do everything in Debian without having a Debian status, except uploading packages. So you can also modify any bug. And there's also not mandatory anymore to reveal the real or the passport names. You can join also Debian without that. There's been examples of that in the past. So as I said, Debian is package-based, and so every package has a bug in the entry in the bug tracking system. I'll kill this IRC for a second. And there's some pseudo packages, which there. Wait a second. So if you want to file bugs, the URL to go to is bugs.debian.org, and then it changes to this www URL. In my opinion, the www Debian website is quite unusable. I navigate with it over search engines or something. And the same with, I always go to bugs.debian.org, and then I either go to this email, manipulating bugs by email, or the mail server reference card. Both tabs are really good reads. And down here, there's some of the list of pseudo packages. So there's whatever the bug tracker has a pseudo package. There's cloud stuff, contributors, everything which doesn't really fit in a package is in this pseudo packages thing. And you can also always go to bugs.debian.org/package name. So whatever Linux or Firefox or Bash or whatever bugs you, find the bugs there. Bug filing is basically a simple email to submit Debian orgs with a subject, what the bug title shall be, and the first line the package name. But it's better to use the tool report bug for filing bugs, which will ask you some questions in the process. And when you mail a bug, you can also xdebug CC when you submit a bug, so that the new bug with the bug number, that the person who receives the CC gets the bug with the bug number and not just the mail to submit. Now, if I want to briefly explain some documents which made Debian really stand out, I think. So on this web page, where I don't find anything, the one thing I find easily is the social contract here. And that really defines Debian, so that Debian will always remain 100% free. We'll give back to the free software community. We'll not hide problems. Our priorities are our users and free software. And there's a definition of what doesn't meet the Debian software standards. And from this derived are directly the Debian free software guidelines, which define what software has to have to be accepted for Debian main. I'll not go through this in detail now, but I really recommend to read it. The other thing I wanted to show what was this? Was the policy manual, which I only find via the sitemap. So I go to the start page, then go to the sitemaps. There's the policy, but policy really describes everything, how packages must be built. So there's a Debian directory, and there needs to be a rules file, a changelog, a control file, which values are in the control file. Everything, this is defined in policy. So if you want to know something about Debian, technically read the policy manual. Then again, I don't know what I wanted to show, but a start page. Yes, the Debian Code of Conduct, because I wanted to actually show you the diversity statement, but I found it over the Code of Conduct. The code of conduct is actually pretty nice. Be respectful, assume good faith, be collaborative, try to be concise, be open, and in case of problems, there's some advice what to do. And so the diversity statement is just this. The Debian project welcomes, encourages participation by everyone. No matter how you identify yourself or how others perceive you, we welcome you. We welcome contributions from everyone as long as they interact constructively with our community. While much of the work for our project is technical in nature, we value and encourage contributions from those with expertise in other areas and welcome them into our community. And this is quite new, this statement. I think between 5 or 10 years. And Debian has changed a lot from this. In the 90s, it was really known for flame wars, and that's a lot better nowadays. There's also some community guidelines which are linked on this code of conduct page, which are also nice about flame wars on mailing lists and package management. And if you have conflicts, maybe read this. Technically, if you want to find something about a package, the best thing is to go to tracker.debian.org and /source package name again. You can also subscribe to the PTS to get emails about new uploads, bugs, or whatever. Most of the sources, but not all of them, are now on salsa.debian.org, which is a GitLab instance for Debian projects. There's also sources.debian.org, where you can browse all the sources of all releases with a web browser. Or not all releases, but the current releases. I forgot to write down snapshot.debian.org, where you can get packages going back till 2001, I think, so 17 years of everything which was ever in Debian and everything which will be there in the future. The bug tracking system also supports user tags for you can have your own user tags, bugs, or from a mailing list or whatever. And everything can be done via email. There's also a security tracker, again, with /source package at the end, where the CVEs are listed, whether they are fixed in a certain package version, in stable, unstable, old stable, whatever. Lindsay and Debian.org is a automatic checker which is run on all uploaded packages, which checks whether packages comply to policy. So everything which goes in Debian automatically gets tested by this. PU parts does the same or does a similar thing. It installs the package and then removes it, and optionally also upgrades in between, and then checks whether the system is the same before and after, and is used to file bugs. There's now, since half a year, a CI instance running, which runs auto package tests, which runs some tests in the system, in the installed system, which also makes sure that packages don't go to testing. So Jenkins is similar, and Video Debian.net is an archive of all videos from conferences. The other thing which Debian has become work was done in the last 5 years was reproducible builds, where a lot of stuff was started in the Debian wiki, which is now moved to this reproducible builds webpage. And there's many more projects involved, but the tests still run on Debian, on this Jenkins from Debian. And yeah, I will not talk about reproducible builds. I've talked a lot about that. The other thing, we have Debian Conferences once a year. This one in Taiwan. Next year it will be in Brazil. They switch every year continent. This is the group picture from Taiwan. You cannot see really much. It's a bunch of different people. And I think that also flame wars went down in Debian because Debian people now regularly meet, and knowing each other helps. And I'm almost done now. This IRC is generally on irc.debian.org. which is an alias for OFTCnet. And then the channels are called Debian, whatever, Arc, Debian Ruby, Debian Rust, Debian Fubar. Debian still needs sponsors, also because we lost the main hardware sponsor. Yeah. And thanks to you who contribute to Debian. The rest of the time is for questions, if you have them.
Hey, I've been trying to get into Debian package management, and I found it really difficult to get started with. One thing is there's like the policy manual has quite a lot of rules you have to follow. Also, it seems is it true there's 3 different build systems?
There are more.
Okay, but there's a good selection, let's say.
Yeah.
Could you give like an overview of these options for someone who's coming from the outside, trying to figure out what's going on there? Like CDBS versus Deb helper versus DH versus and so on.
In general, today I would say use DH, which is just the Deb helper version 10. So that's basically the same. And CDBS also uses Deb helper and a lot of make files. And I'd recommend CDBS if you want to maintain packages which are currently already maintained in CDBS or in that area, but else use DH. And there's a package called Packaging Tutorial, which lists some best practices. But I agree that this is one of the weak points of Debian, that there's no common way to do things. You can do things many ways. You can use a version control system, and if you use it, it's totally up to you how you use it. There's some standardization with dgit and git build package, which I personally don't use because I like to know what I'm doing, and there's too much magic for me. But I do think that dgit, once it's more mature, it's rather 3 years old or something, if dgit could be really nice, and git build package is definitely really nice. There's many teams who use git build package, and
hey, I know I've already asked you a lot of questions, but I still have more perhaps. So I maintained some Python packages that I then released on PyPy, and of course they have some dependencies, as you know, with these Python packages. But they're also, I get the idea that they're also kind of easy to package for Debian. But what's the general idea of these Python packages that are released quite often and have quite a lot of dependencies to? Should I try and get them into Debian, or is it not worth the effort because they have so many updates and dependencies? Yeah.
I don't know. Debian has now over 28,000 source packages, and 10 years ago it was less than half. And there's many more software out which is not packaged yet. And there's some packages team, like there are people, the packages team which many packages, the Perl team maintains over 3,000 packages, and they have tools so they monitor CPAN. But Perl doesn't grow anymore. Node has 400,000 packages. If they're all going to be packaged, that is too big for the package for up running on small machines with whatever and speed-wise. And it's unclear what should be done there and whether you should run this with PyPy or whatever language tool there is.
Yeah, we talked a bit about package managers earlier and found that Node has now 700,000 packages and PyPy has 150,000. But yeah, maybe there's some hidden criteria of which packages that qualify to be in the Debian ecosystem.
There's also some guy gave it just a talk at DebConf about automatically packaging new upstream versions of packages and then running tests and see whether they still work and blah. And that's a way definitely to reduce the load on people. The question is whether people then still review the changes. Pardon? My opinion, it's good not to waste people's time with stuff which can be automated. But then there needs to be more review at upstream side. Also because there's many distros like Arch or whatever where it's really easy to package the new upstream version. So Fedora is doing also the same. So this automatic packaging of new versions is something distros want to do. And how much review there is between each new Firefox or kernel or whatever release with millions of lines of code. But I think this is a general software development issue and not really a Debian issue, which is just a downstream of upstream packages.
I have two questions. You said systemd needs work. Do you mean Debian systemd package and system
there's
needs work, or the non-systemd?
There's
Debian
3 or 4 open bugs for the usage of System 5. So there's the systemd works fine, but there's 3 or 4 bugs which affect System 5 users.
Yeah. And another question: many people use apt-get. Why should they be using apt?
Since stretch apt is recommended.
Yeah, but why?
Because the upstream has done so, and apt-get and apt come from the same source. So unlike aptitude, which is a different tool, it's now apt-get, which has been renamed. Also, apt has more stuff like what used to be an apt cache is now integrated into apt. And the third command as well. And it's a bit annoying because in Jessie you still you can do apt install as well, and apt remove and apt everything, except apt auto remove needs apt-get auto remove in Jessie. Yeah.
Okay, I guess I have the next question. So I don't intend in the short term to become a Debian developer or anything like that, but I do write software and I would like that to be in Debian. So would you recommend that I try to package it myself and navigate this maze of build systems, or should I find some Debian developer and get him to do it for me?
I think you should find some Debian person to maintain the package in Debian. You can file a bug so that it happens, which is an ITP bug, RFP, sorry, request for packaging. I can help you to file this bug. It's an email, and then there you say, there's this and this software, has this license, the homepage is there, it does this and that, please package it.
Thanks.
A quick question about Debian's interaction with academia.
With what?
Universities and such. Are there anywhere to go if I want to get some teaching materials, some other documentation that can kickstart my Debian teaching courses?
I'm not aware. There's the Debian handbook, but it's a book. Teaching courses about Debian, not really, because it's mostly teaching about whatever Python or Rust or something, or teaching about Linux, POSIX, but not yet about Debian that I'm aware.
I didn't find it either, so I was just asking.
There's quite some slides for talks, but teaching material for universities, I don't know. I'll put this pad into the talk description of the BornHack webpage, so there you can find the note once the pad is gone.
I hope this is not too off topic. I use Debian and Ubuntu for unattended installations. And for many years, the Debian installer has been very stable. And I'm quite in love with that installer. I get a bit worried because Ubuntu and Mark Shuttleworth have set out to now create yet another installer after Ubiquity. But do you know about Debian's stance on the installation process? That will it remain stable and not be disrupted or rocked or anything? for TFTP installations and automating all of the options and so on?
There is a netboot assistant package which you can automate and configure lots of netboot stuff. Generally, I think that Debian installer will stay as it is for the near future, whatever that is, because it's quite modular and can be adopted to many things. It has not been changed to be graphical by default, which is not a big change there, and there can be some improvements to the UI. But the design is also starting sometimes to show its age. Like DI is 17 years old, and it's a nice modular system, but it's also written everything in shell scripts, and the UDEPs are strange, and systems has become a lot bigger since then. And so maybe in 5, 10, or 20 years there will be something else. There are other installers of Debian within Debian. There's Calamares, which is something written in some BASIC, I think. And apparently it works really nicely and many people love it. There is 5 fully automatic installation. There is several image builders, and these image builders could also be used to make an installer. There's Live Systems, which has an installer, so I don't think that will stay forever with DI.
No further questions.